Welcome to this episode of Athletic Trading Chat. On this episode, we are on with Mike Hopper, who, if you are on Twitter at all, you have probably come across once or twice in your time. Mike has been big on social media and was early in the game with AT for All, and really has created a platform to help broadcast and advocate for the profession, and has done a really great job in doing so, highlighting the need for athletic trainers, especially in the secondary school setting and where things are going. And we talk about that a little bit on this episode, plus just kind of talking about maybe the little discourse that happens from time to time within our profession and how we can kind of move past that to help the whole profession move forward. Somebody that we always talk about that helps us move us forward. As always, we're powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. Please check them out. Again, anything that is a positive to help move our profession forward, no matter what direction we might be going in, we think is something that's extremely important. And again, Mike gets deep into that. So with that, no further ado, here's our episode with Mike Hopper. This episode of Athletic Training Chat, we are on today with Mike Hopper, who, as we were just discussing, if you don't know on Twitter, you should. If you haven't, we'd be surprised. It probably means you don't have Twitter and you don't follow athletic training. But we're here to talk today about kind of the advancement of the profession, kind of stemming from a lot of the conversations that happen on Twitter and other places. But before we get into that, Mike, just wanted to turn it over if there's any background you wanted to give, to just a little bit more insight on how you got to kind of where you are in this world today.
In a quick second, I have a bachelor's degree from Southeast Missouri State University in athletic training, master's degree in pediatric sports medicine from the University of South Florida, Morsani College of Medicine, which put me into the high school setting, and here I am 10 years later. So, and I got asked that question today, and I couldn't believe I've already been practicing for almost 10 years. So, and otherwise, I mean, social media along the way has been big for me. So here we are.
So the big thing that we were wanting to try and get into, and a lot of this has stemmed from my own going back to school, kind of looking at the different things, trying to see athletic training on a broader spectrum, not only within the profession, but just interaction with coaches. So this is kind of more of our quote unquote traditional setting things, but we seem to have plenty of infighting within the profession. And so I guess our first question is just from what you've seen and some of the Twitter discussions that you've been involved in, like, what do you see is like our biggest obstacle as a profession as we continue to advance? And I use advance loosely and in kind of quotes.
I think probably the biggest obstacle that we encounter is that we forget what we're really here to do in the first place. We have some who have decided that, promoting the profession is what they're going to do, is promote the profession, and forget about what our profession is all about at the very beginning. And that's taking care of kids or taking care of our patients, whether it's in the traditional setting, dealing with the high school athlete, the college athlete, the professional athletes, in the industrial setting, dealing with that warehouse worker, or, in public safety, dealing with law enforcement or firefighters or whoever our patient population is. We've forgotten to take care of them. And we're more worried about how we look as a profession. And, are we professionally dressed? Are we, what's our behavior like? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? And at the end of the day, our patient population cares very little about that. They care about, do we take care of them? They don't care whether we're wearing a starched shirt or dress shoes or any of that nature. They don't. We do. And I think to some extent that's getting in our way.
So have you from what you've seen and the discussions, like as we again move towards, and I don't know, it's at varying degrees, like the medical model, the in quotes, that's a huge discussion in collegiate athletics now. I don't know that I guess mostly in the high school, you guys have been on the front end of that anyway, because most of the time it's contracted out. It's not like you just got hired by the high school without some physician involvement. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, that all depends on where you're at. Here in the state of Texas, most of us are hired directly by the school.
Okay.
You go into Illinois, most of them are going to be PT clinic employees. And unfortunately, in my opinion, Illinois will always be that way because Athletico and ATI, which are two of the biggest employers of athletic trainers, are based in Chicago.
Right.
So, the medical model at the college level and how they're pursuing that, I think is awesome. And to some extent, I think we need to start seeing more and more of that at the high school level as well. It's interesting how they're going to approach that. Are they going to approach that from the perspective, like a lot of our high schools are already doing, where it's PT clinic or hospital outreach manner? Or is it that they're still employees of the university, but they report to hospital employees, or however they, choose to set that up?
Right.
So that's going to be interesting to see over the next few years.
Yeah, I just wondered if that somewhat has changed it, because when people keep, highlighting the medical professional, and then there was a big spat on Twitter about somebody having a towel over their shoulder and water bottles and all of this stuff that came out. When you talk about that, or if you're employed from a hospital, does that change, the quote professional dress? Do you got to have a collar on? Do you, need to be in khakis or whatever that may look like? And is it new line of thinking against an old guard, or it's so hard to
I absolutely, yeah, I think it is. I think it is. If you ask Dr. Yellen, who's down at University of Houston in their Master of Athletic Training program, he's very clear to tell you that athlete and sports do not fit in the BOC definition of an athletic trainer. And the definition is very much about a healthcare provider.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, I think we have to remember where we come from,
Yep.
and remember those roots. I'll tell you personally, I was just on the field outside just now trying to set up for a lacrosse game that we have this afternoon because our facility manager's out and our SID is out. And guess what? Sometimes things just have to get done. And that's what we have to remember, is to be team players within whatever setting that we're in. And if that means that sometimes we do tasks that aren't healthcare, then so be it, But I think Rick did a great job of that. Rick Burkholder at the Kansas City Chiefs with the whole towel fiasco. He let us. I don't know if you saw the one of him with the Super Bowl champion Gatorade towel.
Oh no, what's that?
On Twitter, and he made sure to post that too. So, and he's our PR chair for the National Athletic Trainers Association. So I think that we can coexist better than what I think we're doing right now.
What do you, from what you've seen, because you've probably gotten a lot more quote hate on social media than the average. Why do people struggle with, because I agree with you, like there's got to be a middle ground, and we can all live in our own kind of world within the bigger profession, because that's ultimately what the profession's done, is expanded out. Like, what have you seen? And I've seen you call some people on this, and we've kind of tried to do some of the same things, nicely, but just being like, we're in this together, so why the animosity between athletic trainers other than maybe just ego?
I think ego has a lot to do with it, and I think some of it does have to do with personalities and personality conflicts, and we all experience personality conflicts, and so we get into this defending our position or defending our profession or whatever it might be, and we feel like we have to jump on people who we see as being enemies,
Mhm.
right? Whether that's a coach who may not agree with us, or another big one that I see all the time is people freaking out about how another healthcare provider who's up in the stands comes down on the field, and I certainly do think that yes, they have a role and they have a time where they need to be told that we don't need your help,
Right.
right? But at the same time, we have to understand the bigger picture of that, and that's one of those things that really drives me nuts when people complain about a nurse coming out of the stands or a physician or whoever that might be coming out of the stands. Is remember that only 37% of high schools in America, 37% of public high schools in America have a full-time athletic trainer, and 31% have no health care whatsoever,
Right.
right? Think about youth sports. That number's even worse. And so it's a situation where those individuals who got into healthcare for very much the same reason we got into healthcare, to help people, they felt like they had to step in at some point in time because there wasn't anybody there,
Right.
right? And so the bickering, I think, has to stop. We have to again, we know when to tell them when, but at the same time, we also have to work with them. At the end of the day, it's about healthcare, right? It's about taking care of kids, and you never know when you have somebody in the stands who could be a big help to you,
Oh, for sure.
And if we just blatantly say don't come down here, then we may not get that help that we could use at that point.
To me, that seems like a huge educational opportunity too.
Absolutely.
To advance the profession, to get it to know, and again, your situation is so much different. In the high school setting, where we're fortunate where we're at. Like, we've got somebody at every game. We've got 10 certifieds on staff, and so when people come down, it's a little different picture depending on what the thing is. If it's just because they want to do some random adjustment, that gets a little interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like your idea on perspective. I've heard other people talking about it. It's like that person cuts you off in traffic because they're speeding through. Well, are they speeding through because they're just being an ass? Or are they trying to get somewhere because somebody's hurt or somebody's
Sure.
a kid? Like, you don't know what their
Right.
is, so why overreact and not be able to take that step back?
Right.
I like I like Joel's education kind of piece on that too, because like you're saying, there's 37% have their full-time AT. So, if you're used to being part of that other group, you might not know what an athletic trainer does. People ask me, what are you going to school for? And I tell them athletic training, and they go, oh, you're going to, be a personal trainer for some of these athletes and stuff. So I don't think, the population as a whole really still understands everything that we do. And I think that can kind of play a role in people coming down to help during certain situations, because they just don't really know what we're trained in to necessarily do in a way.
Yeah, and you're going to see that education in a couple different ways. One, now as we continue to put more athletic trainers into roles, into high schools, into these different settings, you're going to see kids who have an experience with us as a high school athlete, who, when they go on to become parents someday, are going to know that, right? Hopefully. But then also, one of the things with the new educational standards and the new moving to a master's level program and things like that is that interprofessional and interdisciplinary education that's taking place. I know that there's a lot of universities who are starting to incorporate athletic training and physical therapy and physician assistant courses into the same type of a course, right? For example, at St. Louis University, I do know that physical therapy and athletic training take the same therapeutic modalities class. It's the same material.
Right.
So now we're putting these athletic trainers, these prospective athletic trainers and prospective physical therapists in the same room together, learning together, right? University of South Florida is a great example of that. Both the professional program and the post-professional athletic training program through USF are in the College of Medicine. So they take courses with some of those other allied healthcare professionals. They do interdisciplinary training scenarios with simulators and mass casualty events and all that type of stuff. So again, you're exposing those other healthcare providers to each other, right? So that ideally, when they do get out into the real world, they're working together and not working against each other.
It's a novel concept, isn't it?
Hey, like I said, we have a parent who's a physical therapist, and he is great with us. And he just shrugs his shoulders and goes, "When it's about the kids, it's about the kids."
Where do you fall? And again, you've got a unique situation. That's awesome that you're working with somebody like that. Do we as a profession have to be the bigger person, for lack of a better description, and like reaching out and establishing those relationships instead of expecting, like, if that person wanted to come and help you, would you sit there and wait for him to come to you and be kind of pissed off if he hadn't, up until he finally came and had a conversation, versus you being proactive and reaching out and saying, hey, within the context of this would be ideal. Like, do we need to kind of check our pride as a profession to some degree? And
yeah, I think somewhat. Athletic training has always led the way, really, in this concept of interdisciplinary healthcare from the perspective of that sports medicine team, being the physician, the athletic trainer, the physical therapists and strength coaches and sports dietitians and all these different people. You look at these college athletic programs, and like I said, you're talking about having a physical therapist on staff. You're talking about having a dietitian on staff at these bigger schools, sports psychology, all these different perspectives. And again, when it comes back to it, if we take care of those kids, that's what it is at the end of the day. And whereas if we just want to fight with people, well, we can do plenty of that too. Right. But are we going to get anywhere? So I think we do. We have to build our team around what we need, right? Think about it at University of Alabama. Well, when they need a quarterback, they go find a quarterback. They don't go sign a kid who's a defensive lineman and go, oh, hey, you're going to be our quarterback. Well, at the same time, in the sports medicine world, when I need a concussion doctor, I want someone who deals with concussions. Right. I'm not just going to go, hey, you got an MD, you want to be our concussion doctor? That doesn't work.
Right.
So we have to build our team in the best way that we can within the resources that we have in our individual situation.
And realizing that there's an abundance and there's enough. I haven't met many athletic trainers. I can speak from our here, and I could guess from you that you ever are bored or don't have enough patience to see. Like, I guess you see plenty of people that.
Yeah, I think I could say that.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Well, I've talked to many high school athletic trainers that are like, man, I'm just bored. There's literally nobody to see and nothing to do. I haven't met athletic trainers like that too, I guess.
I don't say that very loudly, because when I do,
right,
it gets ugly real fast.
Yeah, it's when it's like too quiet that you just know something is about to happen. The calm, whatever storm is coming.
Right.
Very curious as your thoughts. Like, what have you found ways to effectively communicate, like, what you've seen? And especially, again, always keep coming back to Twitter, but I can only imagine how many conversations you've had face to face, and like people that don't agree with you or your position on stuff. Have you found anything that's worked at all to like help them maybe see what you're trying to get across? Which I think your points are very valid and well thought out. It's not like you're just throw in any random thought that comes to mind just to contradict.
You know, I've been told that I have this candid ability to recall facts.
Okay.
You know, and our principal's made that comment. My assistant has made that comment before about how my brain's like half full of random, what seems to be random facts. You know, like for example, spitting out Atlas data and knowing 37%, knowing, you know, that, for example, and this is some research I've been doing, that 41% of Catholic high schools in America employ a full-time athletic trainer. Nobody's going to know that information, right? But I've spent a lot of time in the last year researching that since I work in a Catholic institution.
Okay.
That's an important thing for us, right? And so what we have to do is we got to remember to not take things personal, number one. And I think a lot of us take things way too personal at times, right? But number two is having facts to support what we are saying. You know, we're in this world of evidence-based medicine and evidence-based practice and all of that, and that's fantastic. You know, we don't always agree with it, right? But having data to support what we're saying goes a long way too, right? And that's one of the big things that we've harped on and really worked on is, you know, again, I can go, you know, I give this example when I talk about AT value stuff, right? I can say that I work a lot of hours. You can say that you work a lot of hours, right? Guess what? If I go to my CFO or I go to my principal and go, hey, I work a lot of hours, they shrug their shoulders and goes, yeah, so.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But when I can go to them and go, no, I average 62 hours a week, most weeks out of the school year, you know, I'm working 60 plus hours a week. All of a sudden there's a red flag to them going, that's not right.
Right.
You know, we have a problem here. And so when you can back that up, and like I said, that's one example we use. And that's one of the data points that we track here. We track a lot of different data points. I think I have probably close to 10 spreadsheets that Lindsay and I track different metrics on. So that at the end of the day, it's not about emotion. It's not about, you know, well, I feel like we do this. It's here's what's getting done in our facility. Here's what's getting done by our staff to justify what it is that we do
right.
on a daily basis, right? And so I have a lot of conversations about what an athletic trainer is and what an athletic trainer does and all that type of thing. And at the high school level, so many of those parents, they don't have the slightest idea because they've never been exposed to it.
Right.
Right. I went into a parent meeting a few years ago and I asked one of our coaches before I went into this parent meeting, I said, what should I talk about in this meeting? Because I can go in there and I can talk for an hour if you'd like. Nobody wants you to do that, right? So what is it that the parents want to hear? And he goes, why don't you start off with what an athletic trainer is? Because none of our parents are going to know that. Okay, that's a valid place to start.
Right. I can agree with that. Yeah, I found it interesting. Again, I think you do a good job, and I've tried to mirror it and trying to take it on my own, just even like in conversations of, you know, facts for sure. You know, people don't think you're busy, and then you go and you say, well, we've had this many interactions. We had that a couple years ago. Someone came down and we could roll out to kind of the best of it was probably a little under. We had 20,000 patient interactions, and they were dumbfounded by that.
Yeah,
like, that was even like a feasible number, and it's just like, well, swing down and you'll see our 11 tables have 30 some people on them, and it's not hard to figure out. And then
I just want 11 tables.
Yeah, right. We're trying to double our square footage, and that's going super well.
I'm sure.
We're thinking about just starting to take down walls and hoping nobody notices.
If the one wall that I'd like to take down wasn't a weight bearing wall, I'd do the same. I've offered to get the bulldozer here more than once, and they haven't taken me up on it yet. So I'd fix a lot of problems in this building, but unfortunately, it's going to take some time to fix the problem after like I said, bulldozer only take about 5 minutes.
Right. Simple.
But they didn't go for that one.
Just makes too much sense, and that's where it always goes haywire.
Yeah.
No, I think you do a good job because you present those facts, and then you almost steal their argument right underneath them because it makes logical sense.
Right.
And I think it's always interesting, and I know a lot of people respond to them. I do every once in a while the AT Anonymous handle where there's just questions coming out, and people get all fired up about it. And reframing it pretty much kills the argument or whatever anybody can get hot about. Then yeah, if there's anything you have to kind of add on to that, just like how you go about that, if it's even a conscious thing or it's just how you think about presenting the profession and what it means. I saw you had something the other day that somebody was like baffled, or you were responding to them because you figured they were baffled that you got a job right out of grad school or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they were talking about, the issue in the world today about, everybody wants people to come out with all this experience, but nobody wants to give the person a chance to get some experience, right? And the argument that they were having in this discussion was how an athletic trainer graduating from a CATI accredited program and is BOC certified, which, by the way, is the gold standard, right? They come out of school, they are an athletic trainer. And, how they just can't work at the college level, right? And I've heard Jeff Allen talk about this before, University of Alabama. And he goes, and he has said that, he goes, the easiest job I've ever had is being the head athletic trainer at the University of Alabama. Because think about the resources he has at his disposal, right? He's got a physician probably next door to him when he sits in his office. He's got, again, a staff of how many athletic trainers. He's got physical therapists and strength coaches and on and on and on. Meanwhile, you got that high school athletic trainer who, in a lot of cases, are by themselves, right, with maybe nobody on campus to rely on. Hopefully, they're tapping into the resources that is the school nurse.
Yep.
Right. Which we could talk for days on too. I have an article coming out about that soon. Just got approved yesterday.
Nice.
Is that
PA news?
That'll be through the NFHS magazine. So, but like I said, that just got approved yesterday. But the high school athletic trainer is so much on an island in so many different ways, right? But we have so many people in our profession who think that's where people need to start. They either need to just go to the high school level and go away, right? And I saw that argument the other day on that AT Anonymous, where somebody asked about how they are a high school athletic trainer, and they feel like they are lesser of an athletic trainer than our college and pro counterparts, for whatever reason. But people think, just go to the high school level or go become an intern and make no money.
Right.
And that's our fix to this profession, But so there are those that they need to realize, and they want to complain that, I work with this team at the college level and now they're giving me a second team and, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. Okay. At the end of football season, we lost our playoff game and somebody asked me, goes, so, things are going to slow down for you now, right? I just nodded. I said, yeah, now I only have 13 teams in season. Like, what do people think? Right. We tracked it the other day. We had 62 events that myself and my assistant covered and some PRN help that we bring in on occasion in the month of January, 62 events.
That's great.
But the high school life is a piece of cake. Just ask.
Yeah.
So it's just
never thought that.
It's one of those things you just have to remember. that what you post onto social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else, a lot of people are seeing, right?
Yep.
And that's one of the arguments that people have too, is that, we're great at promoting ourselves to ourselves, which is very true. How are we promoting ourselves to the outside?
Yep.
How are we promoting ourselves to our parents, to our coaches, to our administrators? I think a lot of athletic trainers are scared of their administrators, and you don't have to be, right? Now, I'm not going to say I go up and have a conversation with our principal just on a regular basis about anything and everything,
Right.
or whoever. Yeah, I have some of those relationships, but at the same time, don't think that you can't go talk to that person either. We just want, so many times, we just want to stay in our little bubble. We want to stay in our hole. We want to be in the shadows, right? And if you want to do that, great, but don't sit here and tell me that you can't get anything accomplished from your shadow either.
I think that's huge. Just like you said, like if you don't talk to your administrator, how are you ever going to be able to demonstrate your value?
Right.
Like, again, you don't have to go up and brag and say, well, I do this, that, and the other thing. But if you can show that value, I think that's been our biggest switch here for myself, is we get support that I didn't necessarily feel the first couple of years because they didn't know any better. Well, I was on me to go out and show them, like, this is what we do and like how we do it. And then it's been a shift over the last couple of years that has made life just that much better, because there's an understanding of what we as our group does.
Right. We've gone a long way in the 5.5 years I've been here. And I've told people, I felt like when I came here, I was hired because they had to have someone, because that's what we do. And, and I was an expense that they had to do, right? To a place now where we are valued and we are recognized as an important piece of our school staff, and not just our athletic staff, but of our school staff, and somebody that they can rely on, right? But also somebody that they can support, and that we don't just come asking for things just because we want to ask for it, right? We have a logical reason. Again, putting logic in there. We have a logical reason for what it is we're asking for, and we have a justified reason. And so we tend to get things that we ask for that maybe others, struggle with. And so it's the idea that, people think I have an endless budget. One reason people think I have an endless budget is I don't spend money. And so guess what? Then I have money, right? But also, again, like I said, I justify things so much, and just find ways that, hey, this is important, right? At the end of my first year as the athletic trainer here at BL, we got a new school president, and one of his challenges to us was that we want to be like this. We want to be the schools that other schools want to be like, right? And we've taken that challenge head on here in a sports medicine realm, but also, as a Friar Health team, right? Myself, my assistant, and our school nurse, and so we are trying to be at that cutting edge of everything that it is that we do. Yes, the sideliner tent is a very expensive piece of equipment. It's $4,000. We have one because our kids' privacy is important to us, and we found a way to make that work. And and at first, when people look at it and they go, "Well, that's $4,000," you're right. Here's what it does. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and so it's getting them to understand what it is that we're doing, right, and not just, well, we're just spending money,
right?
Because anybody can do that.
Yes, they can. Anything else kind of around this you wanted to cover before we hop into the 5 questions we ask everybody?
No, I think we're good.
Good. So first one is, where do you see athletic training going in the next 5 to 10 years?
So right now, again, we go back to that number. An Atlas says there's 35% of high schools in America, public and private, who have a full-time athletic trainer, right? 31% have a part-time some way, somehow.
Yep.
34% have nothing, right? So 35 plus 31, I'm not a math major, but I believe that's 66%, okay? 10 years ago, we thought 42% of high schools had some sort of athletic training services. We're at 66%. That's a 24% increase in about a 10 or 12 year span. Now, could that have been that 42% was bad research? May very well be, right? But I look at it, in 10 years, we've gone up 24%. In another 10 years, I sure hope that we're at another 10, 12, 15%. You know, if we can get to the point where we're at 80%, we're getting a long way closer to our goal. That's where we've got to get. And that's a one of those things that we have to continue to work on. And in the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to get there.
I think there's been a good stage set for it. I think it's a bad route to go. It's not the best route, I would say, but we get all of these articles and things that get posted about, hey, the good parts are, when the athletic trainer is there and does their job and, saves somebody's life or those things. But you see some of these other ones that end tragically. It's becoming too hard to ignore.
There was one, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. I looked this up at one point, but there was a period of time where there was like 20-something deaths in high school athletics or in youth sports in general,
mm-hmm.
and less than 5% of those fatalities had an athletic trainer. That is a huge stat that we have to hang our hats on. We can't prevent every death. We know that.
Right.
But having an athletic trainer, having an emergency action plan, having an AED or other types of equipment, and having that plan puts us in a whole lot better condition to save someone's life than not having that. There was a study last year that sudden cardiac arrest has only like a 10% survival rate, right? I mean, it's really low. Having an athletic trainer brings that number up to 83% survival rate. Seems pretty simple math to me.
Right.
Yeah. And again, there's 17% that are still dying. We know that.
Right.
But 17% is a lot better than 92%.
Absolutely. If you could go back and give yourself some advice as a young athletic trainer, however many years ago, and you can set the example if you'd like, what would that be?
Start collecting data now. We're in our 3rd year of collecting this data, collecting this data. I wish I started collecting it a long time ago.
No.
Because where we've gone in 5 years, now some of that is where I'm setting, in my setting I'm in now. I
Yep.
get that. But where we've gone in 3 years since I started collecting the data compared to where we went in the 2.5 years before I started collecting the data is a big difference, right? Have that information at hand, be ready with it, because when they ask you for it, they want it now. They don't want, well, let me go back and look at it. Let me go find that information for you. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe it's one of those, hey, it's on my computer. I got to pull it up so I remember that data specifically, right? But don't be, hey, I want to know how many athletes you saw in the month of May, and go, well, give me a couple days and let me redo this. No. But here, I can pull it up in 3 clicks. How's that sound? When they want it, they want it.
Yep. I like that advice. Most influential resource you found in your career? Twitter.
I'm gonna say Twitter. Now, so I am a prime example of two things. Number one, that Twitter can be beneficial. Okay. And number two, that jobs are about who you know, not what you know. What you know is what lets you keep the job. Who you know is who gets you that job in the first place. Right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I say that, and I'm going to tie those back together because I did see in the meeting notes about AT Talk, and unfortunately AT Talk's pretty much fallen off by the wayside. But that was a discussion that we started, Christy Messina and I started in 2014. And because of my relationship with Christy via Twitter,
mm-hmm.
lined me up to talk to this person lined me up to talk to this person who told me that when this particular position opened up, I would be getting a phone call from this school. And within 2 weeks, guess what? I was getting a phone call from this school. And as they say, the rest is history. And here I am.
Yeah.
Right. People ask me all the time, well, how did you get from St. Louis to Dallas? That's a 10-hour drive. And I'm going, or why did you move to Texas from St. Louis? And I go, for this job. Well, how did you even hear about this job? It all goes through the network.
Right. I've gotten 2 of my jobs because I knew somebody. One, I'm pretty sure my resume got pulled out of the no pile to the should at least talk to him pile.
Yeah, absolutely.
On my behalf, or else I would have never had that opportunity.
And I can tell you, we did the same thing when we hired my assistant the last time, when we hired Lindsay. It wasn't that her resume was bad. It was I had 55 resumes.
Right.
That about 40 of them were pretty good.
Right.
Right. And there was nothing about it that stood out that goes, we need to interview this person. Right. Well, one of our assistant coaches on our staff happened to have coached her in high school, and his daughter was friends with her in high school. And he came to us, and we're going, okay, let's retake a look at this. And we interviewed her, and here we are. Right. It's one of those things, and it's like our HR director and I were talking about. When some people apply for a job at a school, there might be 1 or 2 people who are actually qualified for that job out of their applicant pool.
Yep.
In our case, 90% of those people are qualified for the job legally. It's just a matter of now, how do you make it fit? And we've certainly done that.
If you could change or eliminate one thing, could be a modality, common practice, or a mindset in just the field and profession of athletic training, what would it be?
Athletic training versus the world. That mentality. Because we can sit here and we can watch our professionals bash chiropractors, physical therapists, you name it, right? Again, it goes back to our conversation earlier about, these medical professionals coming out of the stands. They don't all have bad intentions, right? I get a kick out of when we talk about, well, what kind of doctor are you? Well, I'm a gynecologist. Well, that ain't going to help with a concussion, right? Hey, guess what? Gynecologists still play a role in healthcare. It might not be the role we need today,
right?
But they do play a role,
yep.
Right? And so that, like I said, that athletic training versus the world mentality that we have. And again, whether that's our coaches, whether that's patients that we may not care for, right? We may not like because of their attitude or work ethic or whatever that might be, whether it's parents, whoever, we've got to do a better job of working with people and not working against them.
I would agree with that. And then just our last one is, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
Athletic training is, there's a reason. People ask me all the time, do I like my job? I have kids ask me that question. I'm going, I work way too much to not like my job. I wouldn't do it if I didn't. Athletic training is my passion. Huh?
I mean, the paycheck, I'm sure, is just you're set for life with 10 more years, right? Like all of us. You're in it for the
I can't. I'm in it for the money. Yeah. That's always the case. I can't complain about my paycheck.
no, I'm with you.
I mean, I'm a very fortunate person, but um, I think athletic training for me, I can define with the word passion.
I like it. Anything else you want to share? Obviously, we'll put your Twitter handle on this if people don't have it, but again, surprising, but that's all right. But anything else?
I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate it.
Was very intrigued on your insight on some of these things as it continues to boil over on social media, as always.
As always.
Well, good luck with your lacrosse game this afternoon, and hopefully we'll run into you sometime in the near future.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.